Dear audience, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to St. Petersburg State Electrotechnical University. We are quite a large group. We're the team, which are greeting you from the rector's meeting room. And I'm introducing the people who are present here. First of all, I'd like to introduce Anastasia Minina, our speaker for today. Anastasia is the Vice Rector for International Relations. And next to her, you can see a tiny flag of LETI flag. It's small. It's our signage for today. Small because we're not going to talk much about ourselves. We will be talking about the future of universities, and the university future. In a certain way, this future is represented here by the rest part of our audience. These are our students. And maybe those of you who saw the videos can recognize faces. Some faces may seem familiar to you. They were our narrators in the video, and they joined us for today. Speaking about the students, two of them have an important mission. They're responsible for chat management. Everybody will the audience will have microphones disconnected, but you can ask your questions or give us feedback using the Zoom chat. And the two persons, they will be kept busy by collecting your questions or feedback. You can do it even in Russian. Вопросы также можно задавать по-русски. For that, I would like to draw your attention to the button, which you can see down below in the lower panel of your Zoom. It is the globe. If you press it, you will get simultaneous translation in Russian or in English. На всякий случай повторю. Для тех из вас, кто хотят слушать эту дискуссию на русском языке, есть синхронный перевод. И вы можете слушать перевод на русский, если нажмете кнопочку с глобусом, и тогда синхронный переводчик будет вам давать адекватную информацию по ходу нашей дискуссии. Это организационные вопросы. Теперь, so those have been organizational issues. Now I'd like to tell about the persons and organizations who really made it happen. First of all, this is Nufiknesa, Russia, Netherlands Education Support Center. It is the expertise and service center for internationalization and education. If you think about education in the Netherlands or any exchanges with the Netherlands University, this is the right contact for you, Nufiknesa. But it's not only that. Nufiknesa is famous in Russian academic circles for its Dutch science talks. Actually, this is the Dutch science talks. So these science talks, they cover a wide range of subjects. Of course, focusing on modern education and research. The subject of aging universities, of course, is very important, not only for Russia, but also for other countries. And Nufiknesa helped us to find very knowledgeable speakers. You will listen to them later today. Another partner of LETI in this endeavor is the Consulate of the Netherlands in St. Petersburg. The Consulate of the Netherlands in St. Petersburg is very active in supporting vibrant spheres of social life and economy, culture, and of course, education. And by this, I have introduced Ivars Heers, the Deputy Consul General of the Consulate of the Netherlands in St. Petersburg. Ivar, now the floor is yours. Happy to have Ivar here with the greeting speech.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, for the introduction. I hope I can be heard clearly. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear Vice Rector, Mrs. Minina, dear honorary guests, students, I would like to thank you all for inviting the Consulate General of the Netherlands to say a few opening words here for this online event. I see that we have a long and impressive list of speakers, so I will try to keep it short. In the first place, I would like to congratulate all the professors and students of the Electrotechnical University with its 135th anniversary. That's a very good age, but I still wish you a lot of successful years ahead. Education has always been an important factor of stability and growth for countries. And as the world's economies are rapidly transitioning towards more knowledge-based economies, one could say that education and the way that we deal and look at our universities is becoming even more important, that it's a vital factor for growth and for well-being. Knowledge-based economies provide an environment where competition is vital. However, we do not only value competition, certainly also as the Netherlands, but we also share or appreciate knowledge sharing wherever that is possible. And that is also why, as the Netherlands, we gladly support these kinds of events, these kinds of international knowledge sharing projects. We appreciate very much the work that we do there with the office of Nafik Neso in Moscow, the representation of Dutch universities here in Russia. I would like to thank all the guest speakers for their willingness to contribute to the discussion today, particularly also the two Dutch participants on the program, Mrs. Pascal Leistra, who's a senior architect at Atelier Pro and also a guest teacher at the Technical University of Delft in the Netherlands, and Mr. Jasper van Winden, who's a project manager for educational innovations at Utrecht University, also in the Netherlands. So today we will learn more about how to create a comfortable, inclusive, and motivating environment in the modern campus. Without a doubt, that's today's education requires inspiring and flexible spaces to adapt to rapidly changing societies. And I also think that, well, the pandemic that we witnessed in the last year has forced us to rethink our ways of living and also the ways that we communicate with each other. So I suppose it also for you and for many other universities here in Russia, many things change to an online setting, which can also be part of this future thinking. So thank you all for joining today. I wish you a very fruitful discussion, and back to you, Tatiana.
Oh, thank you, Ivar. Thank you for the bon voyage, for the, so to say, kind of a Dutch blessing for the discussion. And I'm going to give the floor to Anastasia Minina with the opening speech. Anastasia, the Vice Rector for International Relations, you are welcome.
Thank you, Tatiana, for introduction. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to see each of you, all connections. I will open and start our today discussion with the best international and Russian professionals which develop their campus at their countries. Thank you, colleagues, for your time and for your participation. First of all, our online discussion opens the program, as already told, dedicated to birthday of our university. And it's really a great time to think about the future. First of all, I would like to say that the main trend today is the massification of education. And our university is a very good example. For example, from 2013 until nowadays, we doubled the number of students, and it's really a great number today. It's a great challenge because we have to think about how to create comfortable, inclusive, and motivating environment, and how to do it with the untouchable heritage, and answer a lot of other questions. I asked to open my presentation, and today I would like not to speak too much about only our university, but start with us. Academic spaces of future universities. So we understand that today the spaces is not only physical spaces, but also digital spaces. Today I would like to show you and get acquainted a little bit with our physical spaces and to speak about it. And start with historical parts of our university and our history in a short view. Our university is the oldest electrotechnical university in Europe. We were founded more than 135 years ago, as you have already known. And our first elected director was the inventor of radio communication, Professor Alexander Popov. And certainly a lot of another famous inventors, scientists, and public figures have studied at work at our university. And I know that today, from the short video of our students who are here, you have already known a lot about these very famous figures of our university, and a little bit get acquainted with the campus, with our campus. And you see on the picture here, the most famous view of our university is the first building of our university, and it was designed by Alexander Vekshinsky, and really a very huge number of money was spent in order to do it. And one history that the construction was supervised by Prince Michael, the youngest brother of the last Russian Tsar Nikolai II. And a lot of money were given by our another Tsar, Alexander III, and even our university was named after Alexander III. And it was named Electrotechnical Institute of Alexander III. It was such kind of one of the first name of our university. Moreover, that's also very interesting. The first investor of our university was a very large and very known company, Siemens, and we are also proud of it, and until now continue to work with this company, this corporation. Next, so you see our first building, and I have already told a little bit about it, our beautiful pictures. Here also our old library at this building, and the flat, the museum of Alexander Popov, its laboratory, the oldest one and the part of our the whole museum of our university. The other building, the second one, and the building D, it was the dormitory for our students, and it really was very comfortable when students study at the university and at the same time live very near. And the building D was the house for our professors and their families. So it also was very, very comfortable. But now all these buildings are used as lecture room and as laboratories. So it's such kind of usage of these buildings. You see the picture. The next also very interesting building is building 7, and the interest is that it looks like a crosses, and when you look at it, it's really a wonderful construction, but now it's used for administrative departments and more used for such kind of needs, not for students. You see it. We understand that no construction and no development at war time, but after the war, the third building was organized at our university and it appeared. And there is a very big assembly hall for more than 500 students. And now it is administrative building with also lecture and laboratories, which are used at nowadays for our students. You see this building with very beautiful construction as well. So, and the most modern building of our university is the 5th building. You see the date of its construction, and the interest of this building is that at first at our university we divide the lecture part and the laboratory part at this building, and now it's also very famous for one of our innovation laboratory connected with nanotechnology. And I will speak a little bit about our laboratories and innovation spaces. So we select our priority areas of the university. You can see them on the slide. And according to these priority areas, certainly we develop very, very modern laboratories. I also show you just some examples. One laboratory, you see it in the left the left, huge one. It was used for the very big computer. Now it's a very modern laboratory for navigation system and equipment, and we can use it nowadays. The same, I have already shown you the third building, and now on the bottom of, on the top of this building, a special laboratory polygon for artificial intelligence. Here is also part of our laboratories, nanotechnology, biomedical systems, and so on. So we are not stop only on these spaces. We continue to develop it, and each time we are thinking about the future and try to renovate some places. About it, I will tell you a little bit later, but now I'll give the floor to another speaker. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anastasia. It was a kind of a submergence, both into the history and the current challenges of our university. Now let's get down to serious business. Next speaker, Daryl Melnick, will tell about the current situation in the universities, or Universities After Dark. Quite an intriguing name. A few words about Dara. Dara is the top Russian expert in the university strategy. She is the lecturer. She's the head of research group in Skolkovo Education Development Center in the Moscow School of Management, Skolkovo. Dara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I will not share the screen with you. I do not have a presentation. I would actually like to have a conversation with all of you, and preferably to see your faces, though I've noted that people get increasingly uncomfortable with turning their cameras on because we feel that it's a sort of an intrusion into our private space. So I have 4 ideas to share with you today. The first one is nothing fundamental has changed. I feel this is really important amid all of the conversations about universities dying or universities having to alter absolutely every aspect of their activities after the pandemic, but nothing fundamental has changed. Universities are still and they should be involved in their main duties, which is to produce, critique, transfer, and apply knowledge. However, and that's the second idea, some new responsibilities have appeared. Firstly, the pandemic has exposed university shortcomings, which now must be addressed. Of course, we knew of them before, but during the pandemic, they kind of came to the surface and we were able to, we had the luxury of really facing the problems, which is not the luxury you always have. And it sounds kind of bad, but really you don't often get a chance to truly concentrate on what's wrong. Mostly you just gloss over it or paint over it or ignore it, disavow it, try to somehow live through it without stopping to fix because you have your routine to perform, you have your everyday duties, you have your agenda. But issues such as access, equity and equality, pedagogy, we suddenly realized that we don't know what we are doing when we teach students. Our pedagogy is not reflective, and it's not just about online teaching, it's about teaching as such. And there are many other issues which now must be tackled finally. So that's idea number 2. The idea number 3 is that the forced shutdown, the period of, well, online learning, isolation, especially social isolation, created a kind of debt which we must now repay. I'm talking about not financial demands of students, which universities in some countries have to deal with, but rather intellectual demands and intellectual amends we have to pay now. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about what we missed during those months and what higher education institutions in some countries is still missing. And that's empathetic nod to Dutch universities. Firstly, universities are institutions which create norms, which make you question how you function, what you do, how you think. They are the places where large concentrations of young people interact with older generations. And that kind of collision creates new norms. And that allows universities to be change makers in their societies, like women's colleges in the 19th century, or student-centered universities building one's agency in the 60s. Now universities are spreading such values as internationalization, diversity, entrepreneurship, equality, also goal orientation, thinking about one's goals, not just following the path of your parents. And that is still happening, even if our delivery format is online, but it's not happening at the same speed and at the same intensity. The second thing we're missing, and this has been discussed widely, so I will not elaborate, is chance encounters. And the third thing is rituals and ceremonies, which matter for universities because they balance out this uncertainty which we get if we are truly really involved with scholarships, because we set problems, we try to solve them, we face the unknown, we interact with the unknown, we know the things are changing, we're critical towards what's going on around us. And that makes us scared, while ceremonies and rituals bring us calm. Graduations happen every year. Vivas happen every year. You get certain specific events which mark the passage of time. And for many universities, that is not the case because a lot of events, in some universities, all the events have been moved online. And while for some ceremonies, this has been a rather good development, I'm talking about PhD Vivas, when you actually get some people to listen to you and you know that they are there because they want to be there, not just because you have a room to fill out. But other events like graduations, are just better offline. We have to talk about that openly. It's not the same thing. If you receive your diploma via post and you get congratulated via Zoom, as compared to getting your actual physical diploma from your actual flesh and body dean or rector shaking their hand. I remember that moment. It was a poignant moment. And a lot of graduates have missed it. Finally, the fourth thing we're missing, which cannot really be transferred to online, is mystery. Teaching online and generally conducting business online often leads to cognitive overload, and you don't seek new things anymore. You don't seek new ideas anymore because there are so many ideas hitting you at every single second. So that readiness, that openness to new ideas is something that a lot of students missed during the time of lockdown, and a lot of students are missing. If we're talking about numbers, in the Northern Hemisphere, this was calculated by my colleague, with whom we wrote an article about intellectual immense, Daniel Kontowski, the head of education in the School of Advanced Studies. He calculated the actual percentage of time. So if we're talking about master students who signed up for 2 years of offline education, in 2019, they would spend about 60% of their time, of their learning time online. And that is if the situation stabilizes in the summer of 2021. If we're talking about students who sign up, who are enrolled in 3-year programs, that's 40%. And 4-year programs, that's 30%. That's a lot, which brings me to my next point. We have to actually work out a strategy for this after dark moment. I like the phrase. It was originally coined by, well, not the phrase, the notion, the idea, the word. It was originally coined by Haruki Murakami in his novel After Dark. I'm not sure he means anything specific. Murakami often operates with feelings and atmosphere and just the general sort of situation you're in, which you cannot truly grasp, but you can still experience. But for me, After Dark means that period when all is done, when the worst is behind you, when the hero has come back home. And that moment is sometimes the scariest one, because what do you do when you don't have to solve problems anymore all the time, when you don't have to think about making online as good as offline, making hybrid work, supporting everyone around you, supporting yourself? What do you do now when everything is, well, better, when it's the dawn already, when the monsters are behind you? I'm referring to mythological things and epic stories, because that feels epic. What has happened to us feels epic. So what do we do now? And that's the question that has some specific answers, which I would love to discuss. But what we came up with is just kind of a list of things what could be done to pay those intellectual amounts to students and professors. So that's the third idea, a specific set of tactics. The first one is taking informal education seriously. Every student who wants to be engaged in different activities with professors or other students should get the opportunity to do so over the summer, over weekends, over vacations. The opportunities should multiply, and their number should grow exponentially over the next years, just to allow them to catch up somehow. The second is alumni clubs, which might give us some chance to catch up with building of cultural and social capital, which is quite important when it comes to your education, especially undergraduate education, but graduate education as well. Tech zoning. So this is us coming to physical spaces. We now indeed cannot think of campuses as only physical spaces. They're also digital spaces and normative spaces. So we can create new norms which zone campuses and say you have places where you can zoom in into a meeting, and those places all around the campus. So you can feel both a part of the community and isolated sufficiently so that you can do your own thing, including doing your own thing online. There should be spaces where hybrid learning can happen, and there should be spaces where it is prohibited to use any technology, so that we can finally focus, at least sometimes, on just communicating with each other or even with your own self. And finally, the last thing here in the tactics, I feel that for a lot of students and a lot of professors, this online and this fusing of personal space and public space, private and public space, has led to our inability to focus getting worse, and universities might help with that. They might help with creating spaces where it is easy for you to focus. And that might be one of the focus of attention when we think about campuses of the future, how to create space where you can truly focus, where nothing is distracting you, but where you still feel that you belong to this intellectual community. And I'm getting to my fourth idea. I'm now in Buryatia, out of all places. That's in Asia. For our Dutch friends, near Mongolia, but that's a part of Russia. We are working with IRNI2, that's Irkutsk National Research Technical University. And the conversation is quite strong here about the university being a standard for the space around it. This idea is not new, and it's circulating in Europe as well. Universities as cities of the future, universities setting the tone, universities being normative spaces, spreading their norms, including their norms of using space. I think that the pandemic has created a lot of demand for intellectual leadership and for normative leadership, if we can call it that. And we can, this is a unique historical moment when we can occupy the space boldly and by creating new practices, testing them and spreading them, make the surrounding spaces better. So that's all from me. I'm ready to take questions if there are any, or want to just hear comments, which would be even better.
Thank you, Dara. As for the questions, I believe that there will be many questions in the Zoom chat. Unfortunately, there is not so much time for live communication with all our audience, maybe a little bit later. So Dara was talking to us from a faraway place. It's in Irkutsk or near Irkutsk?
Oh, it's
Irkutsk.
About 4 hours from Irkutsk.
4 hours from Irkutsk, close to Mongolia, just imagine, so far away. And our next speaker, Pascal Leistra, is many thousand miles away from Dara, but she's with us. And she's talking from the Netherlands. Where in the Netherlands are you now? Pascal?
Hello, Tatjana. Hello.
Hi.
I'm actually in The Hague.
You're in The Hague,
Yes.
in the capital. So the Netherlands have several capitals.
Thank you, Tatjana.
So in a way, The Hague is in the administrative capital. So you're talking to us from the capital of the Netherlands.
Yes,
Let's
and
put
for
it
us
like
today
that.
is important because today are the
Yeah.
elections. Sorry for it's the political capital.
Yeah, political capital, right?
Yeah.
You are. So Pascal is the Dutch architect. Actually, the Dutch architect is the global brand name. So Dutch architects are famous for the combining just impossible things in one single practical project. Ingenuity combined with practicality. This is something like the mark of the Dutch architecture. An important thing about Pascal is that she is the architecture of, let us say, knowledge transfer buildings. So her projects are about universities development, libraries, knowledge centers, whatever. And another capacity of Pascal is that she is a lecturer in TU Delft, which is one of the most significant, I would say, European universities, Technical University of Delft. She teaches there. And there is still another capacity of Pascal, which I will add later, but right now the floor is yours. Please speak.
Thank you very much, Tatjana. Others than Dara, I do have images, and maybe that's a bit more the architectural way of presenting. So actually, I do have quite a lot of slides. So let's start. Okay, I hope you can see all my first image. And I want to congratulate, of course, LETI for the 135 years of existing. As Tatjana already mentioned, I'm an architect. I'm passionate by education, educational buildings. I love to teach at the Technical University of Delft. Another passion I do have is about historical buildings. Historical buildings of different eras, all having their own characteristics, all telling their own stories. I think that's marvelous. Next to that, I think the combination of existing buildings and new buildings can give a great match. For the discussion about the future of LETI, I think it's good not to look only at the building scale, but to think broader, to think out of borders, to think of the campus scale. So education is changing, and I want to show it by the campus of Letovo we did in Moscow. It's a modern, totally new building. But what if you want to have modern education and you do have an existing building, a historical building? To me, one of my favorite buildings in that one is the Faculty of Architecture at Technical University of Delft. Again, I think not only think on building scale, but think much more broader, think interdisciplinary, think as the campus can be an accelerator for other developments. And then I would like to come back to the future of LETI. Okay, this is maybe too obvious, but actually, okay, this picture is from about beginning of 20th century. But education used to be for a long, long time like this. It used to be one-sided. Somewhere in the 70s, education only changed. It became two-sided learning. It became interactive learning. It became learning you can from every disciplinary. It became personalized learning. Personalized learning, personalized learning, what does it demand of spaces? It demands a variety of spaces. Spaces should be flexible. There should be place for interaction. There should be place for teamwork. There should be place for concentration. There should be place for interaction, for sharing new ideas, for brainstorming. And of course, there should be place for recreation, playful moments. Maybe why not play ping pong? As mentioned, I would like to take you to our project in Moscow, actually New Moscow. It's called Letovo Campus, and it's about 45 minutes drive from the city, from the center of Moscow. It's not yet connected by the metro, but on this picture taken in 2016, you can see that the city of Moscow is approaching to this building site. On the foreground, actually, I hope you see my mouse, my cursor, you can see the layout of the school we designed for Letovo. Letovo, not only having a big school building, but also student housing, teachers' residence, a lot of outdoor sports facility, and actually it's on a lovely green plot in New Moscow. It's approx 20 acres of green, lovely space. Sorry, I have my mouse is a little bit, very briefly, the school building, it exists when you enter the lobby, you come in a huge central hub. The central hub being a variety of social spaces next to each other. The central hub is connecting three wings. The art wing in the northwest, on the south west you find teaching facilities, and you do have a huge sports wing with all kinds of lovely sports. Already mentioning, when you enter the school, you confront the central hub. The central hub with a lot of nice social spaces, but not only, when we got the commission, the client asked us to make it also possible to have events for up to 1,000 people. So in September 2018, when the school was opened, it happened that the 1,000 people could celebrate the first day of Letovo Campus. I want to zoom in a little bit on this quite ingenious space. And indeed ingenious, why? Because it does have an auditorium for 200 people. When you open the sliding doors, it's going to be part of the central hub. On top of this closed auditorium, you find this open tribune staircase. This tribune staircase for informal talks, social talks for the students. When you look down again to the stage, you see the stage being double used for dance studios. You see the bar and the mirror in the back. So in Holland, we think often about money and money to spend little money with great results. I think that was also kind of a commission we got from this client. If we go to a teaching wing, we had a close discussion with the client, of course, about how to teach. And maybe you heard about schools without classrooms, but actually this particular client did not want to have a school without classrooms. They really believe still in the traditional classroom, although the classroom opens fully. You see all the different classrooms. It opens fully to the recreational space. The recreational space with, again, all kinds of different learning spaces for group works, for teamwork, for working individually. And actually, at the end of the recreational space is this nice relax zone where you can overview the whole campus area. These are some images of the recreational space, and you see aside the classrooms. And they have different color palettes on each floor. And whereas the science labs on the first floor, they do have big vitrines. There's a huge aquarium. And actually, it's not that lively yet, but these photos were taken when the school, before opening the school. So it's still a bit sterile, but if you go there, you should, then you can see how great space it is. Of course, school has a library, but there are not too many books. Again, also the library, it's more about learning spaces, about social spaces. Adjusted to, some more social learning spaces. Adjusted to the library is this greenhouse. The greenhouse, again, it's getting boring. Social spaces, places to chill. And actually, there can also be huge expositions in this space. Student life, it's not only, of course, about learning, it's also about good food. And I believe that working optimal, and now we're sitting indoors, like Dara already mentioned, how myself, I go and try to bike every day to to see something of the world, because otherwise my lovely room, although I'm in contact with you, is getting a bit small. But to me, I really need to do some exercise, and for me it's biking. But in Letterval, there is this huge, nice sports hall. They have martial arts. They do have fitness and a lovely swimming pool looking towards the campus area. Oh. Yes, with the client, we often had discussions about the weather. It's almost like in Holland. We often talk about the weather. But yes, also Moscow, although then schools are closed, or maybe in Russia, does have, of course, also lovely weather, even better, I think, than in Holland during summers. Yes, also outdoor life should be taken in account. And this is my presentation about Letterval. But now, Letterval was an educational program with a new building. But what if you have changing ideas about education and you have a fixed building, an historical building? I would like to make a small differentiation between heritage. buildings. I think to me it's important to say you do have the heritage buildings with high values that you don't want to touch, harm, and change anything. Actually, this is at the University of Leiden. And it's this toga space. I saw it's the same word in Russia and in English, gown space. I didn't know. So the toga space. And you do have this space. It's quite exceptional. It's called the sweat room, literally translated from Dutch. And talking about physical experience, when you graduate from the University of Leiden, you are allowed to write on the wall, on this wall, and it's already allowed for centuries. I haven't graduated from Leiden University, and I haven't been in this sweat room, but how marvelous it would be to write your name next to, to I don't know who. So these were highly valued buildings. There is another chapter of buildings, monumentalistic buildings, which have somehow lower value. And maybe the value to me as an architect, I think this fifth building from the 50s, I love it. But I think a lot of people who think, I'd prefer to have a new building. Actually, the client, we won this competition in 2012. They were quite a bit sad, unhappy that they had to take care, that they had to remain the building from the 50s. The school building from the 50s had to be transformed into a modern building from the 21st century. So what we did is we opened the plinth to show the activities from the school. And during the process, we tried to explain to the client that they were lucky to have this existing building. For example, the workshop spaces they now have, you see them with all the shed roofs. The workshop spaces they would never ever get in a new school building. In that case, they would be small, they would less high, and they would be less attractive as they are now. So to me, there are those monumental buildings with lower value. What happened in 2008? Actually, we go to the Faculty of Architecture in Delft. In 2008, the faculty burned down. For me, for a lot of people who were at this university, it was a national disaster. I even almost cried. We had our lovely student times over there, and it burned down. Then it burned down in May, and the students, of course, had to take their courses again next day after the fire. But even, of course, in September, when the new academical year started, they had to had a real building again. So people thought, well, this empty building, it's for the for chemistry faculty in Delft. They mentioned, well, Faculty of Architecture, you can have this one. And do something with it. It's a lovely building. From the outside, it's great. It looks monumental. But from the inside, it had horrible hallways, too small spaces. There was no mother room. It was not inspiring. There was a bad climate, all kind of pity things. Then a great team of Dutch colleagues, they got the commission to transform this building. And they had some really smart interventions. One thing they did, they covered outdoor spaces, outdoor courtyards. Actually, maybe you know the firm Octatube, they make spatial roof constructions. So they added 2 big spaces to the complex. And another very important thing, there was really bad wayfinding in the old existing building. And what they did, they made a big street, a boulevard, which connected all the different spaces. Here you get a glimpse of this street, this boulevard. And as you can see, you don't experience an old-fashioned building. You feel a dynamic, inviting space. You see all technicals, ducts, clearly visible on the ceiling, so they're not covered. It's a bit a raw style, but really very inviting to me. Oh, sorry, oops. Other way. Here you see the model room, of course, very important for architectural students. Although everything can be digital, to me, this model making, working with cardboard is still very important. And happily also a university, things like that. So there is a huge, great model space. And one of my favorites is the other big space. Okay. Next slide. No, it's, sorry. Yeah, oh, my favorite space, maybe you, yeah, probably you know this one. It's the so-called orange staircase from NVRDV, from Winnie Maas. And it's a brilliant, very vibrant space to be there. And you see also the three-dimensional framework bearing the roof. Okay, I think on the inside, it's really great that you can create an industrial, more playful environment, whereas because of the monumental listed state of the building, it's a bit more formal. One hint I would like to give you for LETI is think about the roof, think about the attic. Often attics in former days have really lovely roofs where you can make beautiful workshop spaces like which have been made in Delft. Monumental from the outside, and I think this is really brilliant idea to have ducks hidden in the former lion's head. Okay, not thinking only about the building scale, but think broader, think about working interdisciplinary, think about working together with other universities. Yes, I go to Delft University. Sorry. Oh, I need to do something with my mouse. Okay, sorry. So Delft Technical University first started in 1842. It's a bit older than LETI, whatever, doesn't matter. It started in the old historical city center. In the beginning of the 20th century, they expanded. They expanded at this part of the site. Then in the 60s, they thought, well, Delft Technical University was really booming, and they needed to have much more space. And as you can see on this picture, the historical city center and the extension, they are almost big as they are. Oh, sorry again. Oops. And this is what happened in the 60s. The new technical university campus, it had a main street, a boulevard with all faculties on both sides of this street. You had the civil engineering, all kind of faculties. But in 30 years, sorry, and in the 60s, they were brand new buildings. Everybody was very proud of them. But in 30 years, they became again a bit old-fashioned. There were too many cars, there was too little green. So in the mid-90s, this architectural office, well-known Meccano, they got a commission to make the campus of TU Delft again comfortable. And that they really did a great job. They made it green. They abandoned the cars. Actually, they put the cars to both sides of the campus, and it became a lively spot again. As you can see on this picture, they really made space again for pedestrians, for bikers, lovely, comfortable space. So, another thing movement in Technical University of Delft is don't think on your own faculty. A faculty building, it's nice to talk with colleagues, but it can be even more nice to talk interdisciplinary. So there was this idea to make a building interdisciplinary, not only stay in your own building or your own faculty, but in this building called Pulse, students from all the different faculties, they come and join. There are learning spaces, there are lots of lecture spaces, and of course, again, there is nice food from all cuisines from all over the world. It's really a great pleasure to be in this building. And one other, my mouse, yes. Okay, one other latest point I would like to address today of innovations of Technical University of Delft is the Science Center in Delft. The Science Center, actually, it connects both students, industry, and city of Delft. Students and industry, they make great futuristic products. Maybe you know this racing car which is in the desert of Australia, reaching I don't know how many kilometers per hour racing parts. But it's all exhibited again in an old building, in a 19th century building, and led by students, and again students, industry, and city, they meet in this one. LETI. Of course, I'm quite far away from St. Petersburg, but what I saw by all the nice movies you made, there is an amazing collection of all kinds of treasures. I think what you have, it's really a treasure, and I think really have it well remained. I saw you also have a very interesting neighbor. It's the Botanical Garden. So I see potential for you, maybe even to connect with this nice neighbor. I do have a few commandments for you. I think preserve your treasures well. Show what LETI stands for, because I think when you're walking around, it feels a little bit like a fortress. You don't really see what's going on. So show it to the people. For the heritage part, make evaluation metrics. List what is really highly valued and what's lower valued, so you know where to make new incisions or where you should keep the beautiful old heritage. Make a master plan. Maybe you already did it, but I don't know it that well, but make a master plan so you always can check whether you're on the right way. Find new partners, co-create. Maybe there is a great link with the Botanical Garden. Make a dynamic planning, not only for now, but for the next 50 years. And yes, start the contest. LETI ready for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. What an inspiring presentation with so beautiful pictures. But before moving on, I should mention the third capacity of Pascal. She has kindly agreed to be the member of the jury in our contest for young architects, but we will tell about the contest later. So by this, we actually are at the equator of our discussion. We've had the opening speech, 2 keynote speeches, and now we are getting down to practical cases. From the Netherlands, we are moving or flying or transferring to Italy, exactly to the south of Italy. This is the University of Salento. And our next speaker, Antoniella Longer, Associate Professor of the University of Salento. And another transfer is from real spaces to virtual spaces, virtual, remote, and quite revolutionary ways of delivering knowledge, new learning spaces. Antonella, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Do you see? Okay. Do you see my screen now? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your invitation. It was really a pleasure for me because actually education is my passion. Education spaces are my passion. Even if I'm a computer engineer, so I usually work with databases, with data management. So I usually work with the virtual world. Actually, I've been doing a really exciting experience at my university at the moment, because even if our university is quite young compared with the others already present, we are here on the hill of the boot, so in the middle of the Mediterranean area, and from this point of view, we are natively inclusive, and we must be natively international in the heart of the Mediterranean Sea. We are a medium university, so we have several academic staff, research people, more than 50 degree programs, and 70K students which leave the city. Lecce is an ancient city from the Roman period. And it is grew around the city center, the historical center, but his growth is has been speed up by the presence of students. Now, the Department of Engineering for Innovation was born in 90s, so it's quite young. But it's pretty exciting thing there, because we work in a really interdisciplinary approach in the engineering field. There are quite big, a lot of sectors with graduate students from the master class, bachelor's, and 2 schools of the PhD schools. We have a lot of labs and a lot of research centers, and physically we are out from the city center. We are in a campus. Here you can see the multidisciplinarity of our topics, from renewable energy to civil engineering to ICT, nanotechnologies, management engineering, robotics, biotechnologies, nanotechnologies, aerospace engineering. And all of these needs a lot of experiments and experimental areas. We have a lot of international cooperation. The department is really engaged in an extensive array of research partners with other universities, government, and industries in Italy and in the EU. And we are natively pushed to internationalization and inclusion. Now, our facilities is growing and growing. As you can see here, there is 1.5K square meters of labs, which have been built in for 2-3 years now. We have very newly and renovated equipment from all the topics we treat. And new spaces are coming, like this. these spaces are newly in conception, in the sense that they are, from the design point of view, more exciting. You see this S building. But what we are trying to do at the moment is to work and create hybrid spaces where students and lecturers can interact physically, virtually, and in new blended ways. This is the reason why we are working and we are interpreting the concept of extended classroom, extended laboratories. You can see on the left our rooms, our open spaces where we have also lectures in these very, very, very nice buildings, ancient buildings. But today, because of the pandemic, but because also of the new approaches towards internationalization, the universities is moving from the physical to the international approach. So our classroom, our lectures are blended in physically and virtual. So we can host lectures from all over the world, even if they can't physically stay with us. It is fundamental for inclusion, because not all our students can go abroad, but smelling the international approach is fundamental for our culture. Not only lectures, but also learning space and work in teams. From the physical students' rooms, we now are working for creating collaborative online international learning programs, where international teams of students work virtually to achieve some project work activity. But we have also moved our this conception and this new interpretation in augmented lectures. We have a very active lab, AVR Lab, which is focused on augmented reality, virtual reality. So we are adding augmented reality facilities to our classroom. What is a chemical lecture if you can see our molecules, how they can be mixed? What if you were in a mechanical lab, in a propulsion lab, and see how the equipment, the engine is made inside through visuals? But augmented classes, augmented lectures are also put together with virtual labs. Virtual labs are virtual spaces where students can do experiments. We have several different virtual labs. Some of them are part of the European and the world facilities, and we use them. So we push our lecturers and our researchers to use virtual facilities, because they extend and they include and they permit all students to stay in a lab, even if the labs have physical closed, strict sizes. Using the virtual labs, we can open these spaces. So from the idea of having simulations, or virtual environment for computer and information technologies experiment, we move to what you can see on the right, which are our labs. This is the centrifugal pump of our university, and through specific virtual activities, we have virtualized them in the sense that students can do experiment on the simulated environment, but it is like being in the physical one. Not for all, but it is very, very funny. What we are also trying to work on is to create massive online open labs, taking our experiment out of the labs and work in cities. For doing this, we have conceived specific platform which provide us with measurement of, in this case, of the environmental space, and then students can have their experiment in the city as part of citizen science projects. Not less important are the concept of remote laboratories. If virtual laboratories are fantastic for educational purposes because we have no limits, no barrier from the physical point of view, from the safety point of view, virtual remote laboratories are laboratories where we can remotely interact with equipment. We have elaborated the concept of collaborative laboratories as a service. So we have platforms where and spaces in video conferences where students can interact, in this case with an electron microscope, and they can do their own experiment in a virtual class, which is different from what usually happens now, where a single student can interact with also remotely with one equipment, but the dimension, the dimension of the collaboration in this in the first case is not present. This is the reason why we have conceived these new spaces. So at the end, what we are doing currently at our department is exactly this extension, this approach, opening the physical environment to virtuality, but considering also blended chances. For any question, I'm available today and also in other later through my email. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonella. Great. So living in such a nice environment in the south of Italy, you're thinking about virtual laboratories. I believe it's quite warm now in your environment around the university.
Yes,
but we should take your word that we will have these virtual sessions, your students in your virtual laboratory and our students, okay? Working in your virtual laboratory, and they would imagine that they're in LETI and doing those experiments in that nice spatial which you showed, or near it, yeah, in one of the virtual rooms of Unisalente. Thank you very much indeed.
Actually, we need for internationalization and for inclusion, and for opening barriers and destroying barriers for our students. Is kind of digital technologies. This is the reason why we are moving in this direction.
Yeah, thank you very much once again. And now we're getting back to the Netherlands. Jasper, I hope that you're here.
I'm here.
Yeah, great. Jasper, his thanks to Nafik Nesser, they found him for us. And because Jasper is a leader of a unique project of learning space transformation. And I was just very much impressed by kind of a motto, slogan, which I found in his information. It will be my interpretation of what he means. It says that it's not the space which shapes the learning mode, but this is the learning mode which should shape the space. Quite revolutionary. So please, Jasper, the floor is yours. Tell us about the Utrecht University developments.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. I just share my presentation with you. You can see it, I guess. Okay, so I work as a project manager for educational innovations at Utrecht University. Our university is a research-led, broad university with about 30,000 students. And now I work on educational innovations, but I've not always worked on educational innovations as a project manager, because before this, I used to be a teacher in the biology department. So just to give you a sense of what that looked like, this is me about 5 years ago. And I'm very excited here because I just transformed my own teaching, my own course into a flipped classroom. So that means that my students had prepared themselves online before they would go to campus and have the class with me. And I did this because I wanted to act as a teacher in line with the educational vision of our university. So active learning, collaborative learning, blended learning. And I had seen that all my students indeed had prepared themselves online before class would start. So I was very happy about that. But then I entered my classroom and it looked like this. And well, this didn't really make me happy because there wasn't enough space to make any groups with my students. I couldn't reach my students, so I had the idea that I would be more like kind of like a coach and talking to my students, but I couldn't reach them. To make matters worse, all the tables were connected with these power cables. So I really felt limited by the classroom, you could say. Luckily for me, the next year, the Teaching and Learning Lab, our Teaching and Learning Lab was realized, and I had a part in that. So the next year I could let go of the limiting classroom and I could design my own classroom for my own course. So the next year, this is me again now, and I was again very excited, but now I had designed my own classroom. So it looked a bit like this. So I was operating from the center of the room. There were in height adjustable tables with whiteboards and screens for each table. And this was a completely different experience for me. So what I experienced was that I had a lot better insight into the learning process of my students because I could see what they were doing on the screen. I had better contact with my students and I could manage the energy level better. So literally my students could go on longer on the day. And my students said we had better interaction with the teacher, we could collaborate better together. And as icing on the cake, the appreciation for my course skyrocketed. So very happy indeed. And as a teacher, this was kind of a transformative experience, you could say. Because I thought, well, when I can have this experience as a teacher, this is my course tremendously improved because of the learning space. I want other teachers, my colleagues, to have that same kind of experience. And we can only do that by also transforming our buildings, our learning spaces at university. So these are two kind of landmark buildings from my university. So that was, well, after a lot of talking to a lot of people, I could start with the project Future Learning Spaces. And indeed, as Tatjana already mentioned, this project starts from, well, this quote: so our learning spaces shouldn't shape our teaching, but our teaching should shape our learning spaces. So I have a very, so my perspective for today will be a very educational perspective that I would like to bring to you. So the project Future Learning Spaces, how is it set up? Well, what we first did was we took a close look to our vision on education at Utrecht University. And from that vision, we distilled the core elements and translated that into didactical principles for the physical learning environment. Then we have concept development. So we design concepts that we think can contribute to these didactical principles. And from that, we want to realize pilot spaces to check if they indeed improve our teaching and learning. So zooming in a little bit. So our vision on education consists of these core elements, all so like active learning, blended learning, flexible, multidisciplinary, with societal impact, etc., etc. And we've translated those into 6 didactical principles. So just to give an example of 3 principles, we say that learning spaces should give incentive for interaction from students with fellow students, with teachers, with the learning content, maybe special materials. We said that our learning space should enhance diversification of learning activities. So we think it is important to be able to have a diverse set of learning activities that you can do within the learning space. And we believe for our teaching model that it is important that the learning spaces are student-centered and not teacher-centered. So the teacher can give a lecture, they can give instructions, but that's not the primary teaching method we would strive for. So these are the didactical principles. And then we try to translate these principles into new concepts, or concepts that fit well with our educational model. So how do we do that? Well, we've developed some inspiration cards, and these are inspiration cards. I can, oh, where's the chat? Let me put it in. Oh, I just lost. I lost the chat button somehow. Maybe in a minute I found it, and then I will put the link to these inspiration cards into the chat, so you can make use of them for yourself. These are 24 principles that kind of relate the physical environment or the learning space to certain educational goals. So, for instance, if you want to have more interaction between students in your learning space, well, how can you make sure that will happen within the learning space design? We let our teachers and our students in several sessions discuss this and then make prototypes, rapid prototyping with Lego. So this is a very fun activity to do, of course, also for our teachers, but it's also very insightful. Very insightful to see with what kind of solutions they come up with, and also to see if there are any patterns arising. So what kinds of solutions are interesting and do you think occur more often? So then stage 2, indeed, we identify these emerging patterns. We select what kind of goals do we want to reach with our concepts, and then refine the concept in a co-creation community. So we have now a co-creation community of more than 50 students, teachers, and experts. And in this community, we literally say, okay, we want to adapt this learning space. This is our idea, but now you can think along with us and think with us how to improve our concept. That's what we do in these sessions. So some pilots. So this is like what the traditional learning space looked like in one of our buildings, and this is an example of what we've made. So this is more like a hands-on learning space with a flexible furniture, not that much technology in this case. And you can see that there's a different. I think I've. No, there's a you can see there's a different position for the teacher because there is no position for the teacher. He is walking around. This is another like an active learning classroom with more technology with an interactive wall on the right side. So this is like a very big touch screen. These kinds of screens for the students, and also webcams to make hybrid teaching and learning possible. And this is our virtual classroom, so this is more like a virtual environment. We've realized. We've also all kinds of plans, of course. So these are some concepts that are work in progress. So first, this is an active learning classroom again, where the teacher operates from the middle of the room. What we want to do with this classroom is we want to make it hybrid. And we are in the middle of thinking very hard how to do that, so that we can actually work in mixed groups of students at location and students online, but also change between like group work and more central instruction and central discussions. And that's quite a challenge technically and didactic, and in the didactic sense. So we are working on that at the moment. This is another one. So the left picture is something we sketched for ourselves, like we would like to have some kind of collaborative lecture hall. So a big hall with more than 100 students, but then a hall in which we could have a more diverse set of learning activities. And then some months later, we found out that this kind of hall was already realized in Amsterdam. So that's the right picture. And as you can see, students can easily turn their chair to form groups, and all the students can be reached by the teacher. And there are also like microphones, etc., to facilitate group discussions. Then I guess the last one and most ambitious one is something we call a learning plaza. And in this learning plaza, this is a formal and informal learning space at the same time. And that consists of several corners in which are very suitable for several kinds of learning activities. And the idea is that multiple courses and informal learning can take place at the same time in this space. So I also have some tips for you for the contest. As you already found out, I am I have a starting point from the didactic point of view. So I would say, first start with your educational vision and goals. Try to involve students, teachers, and experts in the design process. And then let them first think about the ideal teaching and learning practices, and then about the learning spaces. So you will have to guide them through that process, and not just ask them about the ideal learning spaces, and inspire them to come up with creative solutions, and be keen to identify the patterns that arise, and make use of those patterns and start designing from those patterns. Now let me see if I can find it. chat. Ah, found it. Great. Okay. So in the chat, you can find the inspiration cards that we've developed, and you can make use of them if you want to. There's also a kind of a short manual with it to use if you'd like. Okay, so this was my short 10-minute presentation. Thank you.
Jasper, thank you ever so much. You gave us such wonderful tips. First of all students who are present here, we should act on your advice. We should act on your tips. They will be involved in developing learning plazas, new creative spaces in LETI. That's a key. And another thing, which is also important. So thank you very much. It's very insightful. And we are planning new events, maybe for educators, about new formats of learning, new formats of education. Would you accept our invitation to speak there?
Well, if yeah,
you cannot say no now.
no, of course.
I'm just.
I would be happy to.
I'm the
join
manipulator. Sorry, using you as using your presence and big audience. Thank you very much indeed. Now we are moving on, and from the Netherlands, we are moving to Finland. I hope that Ari is here. Ari, are you here? Not
Yes.
yet? Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Just wonderful. We just did everything to do this timing. Ari had to be at a different important meeting, so he was for some time not with us, but he is back. Ari, this is your turn. Now it's going to be quite a practical example of the heritage utilization. Former Imperial Russian barracks, the military base, converted into, and Ari will tell us into what the Smc University, our great partner in international projects, into what the military base can be converted. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, and I'm very honored and pleased to be with you, and lucky that I can have this presentation. I just ask one practical question: that do you want me to share in a way or do you share from their presentation?
You share.
Okay. And you are able to see now something?
We see a nice girl with her back.
Yes, that's what you are supposed to see.
But she's not looking at us, yeah. Not yet.
Okay, our student is looking at the forest, which is Finland is made of. So greetings from southeastern Finland, and this is just 30 kilometers north from where I'm currently situated in the middle of city of Kouvola. It's the national park of Repovesi. But that's our slogan, all for the future, or know the future, know the tomorrow, and feel the tomorrow. So I'm talking about building inspiring learning and working spaces on the basis of values of old and new. And the case is really the former Imperial Russian military base, which was originally built in the early 1910s. And I have sort of prepared this presentation with my great colleague Laura Lehtinen, who I suppose is also listening to this presentation, and also Director of Education of our Culture and Design Department, Jommi Fagerström, who is then interior designer by profession. So what, where, and why? So we are in the southeastern Finland, somewhere halfway between Helsinki and St. Petersburg on this old railway line, and it's just 2 hours from here by train by Allegro to St. Petersburg, and same to little less to Helsinki. And then this place where our Kouvola campus, we have four campuses in 4 cities, but this Kouvola campus is based on a military base, and it was also used for Finnish military until 1989. After that, it was renovated, and the redevelopment for the use of the University of Helsinki for its translation department of languages and translation. And it mainly consists of these 3 historical layers from the original times, early 19th, and then some add-ons in the 50s, and then this what has happened post 90s, the renovation, interior renovation, and then later also this major rebuilding. And so 10 years ago, it was finished, this roughly 20 million euro Paja design studio building designed by architects NRT Limited, the Finnish architectural company. And here you see some pictures from the old military base, and if you are able to catch the link there, you can of course go and see the virtual tour in which you can also go inside the buildings, etc. But there it was important, some of the values that we deciphered from their security and sturdy and long lasting, also the historical look, and fairly hierarchical also in its outlook. And it is, all the buildings have been built around the square as a kind of defensive arrangement. And then later, when used also in education use, they hosted quite traditional classrooms in which theory has been passed on to the future generations. And then this is the new add-on, which you see already in the first picture, part of it, which is built on a slope, small slope next to the main building, and between the main building and the old shooting range, which is like 300 meters long. And there some values were that it needs to have good light, because it was mainly purposed for the design department and handling of and working with different materials from metal to plastic to wood, etc. And the goal was to have a very transparent building. And as you see in the picture down in the bottom, on the ground floor, there are glass walls, and those glass walls are everywhere. So all the workshops that are there in the downstairs, there is 100 meters of them, roughly 10 big rooms with machinery and etc. They have glass walls, and also glass walls to the outer space. And to have some flow, and then also showroom space, and so that it can be used for also other purposes than just sort of design purposes, that there can be multidisciplinary activities. But it was still this, also this new, interestingly, was built to last, and the concrete building was meant, or is meant, to last 150 years, which is quite interesting. So there is in a way something of a kind of this kind of bunker-like element there. And this was mainly then not meant for the theory, but for practice and experimentation, and very, so that, I mean, all this transparency and any furniture that there is will facilitate peer relationships between students, but also between students and their mentors and teachers. So it's a very democratic idea. And there on the right hand, there is a picture of in the similar style, the main building has a third floor, which is from the 50s era, so from the mid-era. And there we had the possibility of making also implement the values of transparency and light, so that the whole third floor is basically, transparent. But on the first 2 floors, it was not allowed that kind of arrangement. But in the first and second floor, which are the from the early 90s, there still it was possible within the rules and regulations of the heritage buildings. It was able to have some glass walls between the corridor and the classrooms. So basically, I think my message and our message is here that we think that this way of adding new values to the old heritage buildings builds a kind of integrated values for sort of historically conscious way of being, and it will, I think, manifest also then and carry on to the learning and the growth of individuals who actually attend these kind of facilities. And it shows clearly, there's clearly visible these mainly these 3 layers, that there is something from the original, and then something has been in the middle in the 50s, and then the new sediments. And it helps to those people who are engaged with these constructions and construction these buildings can also see the continuity from this to the future, so that we can start imagining what would be the next or 4th layer. And like here, it has been used, this contrast with the modern architecture linked to the historical buildings, and it still may mediate continuity, even though for some people, and we have of course heard some criticism also in the community that there is too much contrast, but once you think about it, there can be continuity still. And important thing which we get from the integration of so that not demolishing all the old stuff is the variability, so that it stimulates the senses and gives the possibility of plasticity and also beauty, and this variability is very important for each of us, for our vitality. And then these values beautifully, I would say, complement each other, and very much in a way to the core of what is the mission of universities of applied sciences is this a combination of theory and practice. It's actually our campus, I would say, manifests the slogan of all the Finnish universities of applied sciences, and when they say that they are, or they claim to be better in combining theory and practice than, for instance, traditional universities. But of course, like we noticed, and perhaps you have touched upon this in previous presentations, our present day, we have also been over a year in remote mode in teaching and also in R&D. And of course, our management is thinking about, okay, how much we need learning spaces, physical learning spaces, and the question then remains, how will this change? And I think one good thing is that if we think about the design design sort of department, and it is important to, I think, also in the future to be in touch with the materials that we are surrounded with. So in that sense, we still will need some spaces where we can touch things, and then maybe add more these virtual and digital layers to it, and which eventually means that, I mean, some of the old style theory, I mean, classroom spaces for the learning theory, the need for them will diminish. I will stop hopefully this was roughly 10-minute presentation. Thank you very much. And this is from the other side, the main building, and there you see the third floor clearly, the 50s, and then the original 2 floors, and then on the right hand side this which on the ground seems very small, but then there is a vast new space which is all glass walled within, contained within the small slope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you really very much. So we've noticed that Smc, the Finnish educators and thinkers, they really take long leaps from 150 to the present, and from the present to 150 years more, the future, which you are projecting for your university, for these buildings. We have some questions in the chat. Actually, some have been already answered in the chat itself. I think we will have a brief chat time after the next speaker and before our concluding presentation, if nobody minds. So now we take a long leap, but in the geographical space. It will be from Finland, from Smc to St. Petersburg. Andrei Suravenkov, our partner in the project, in the contest, which is mentioned many times, but not explained yet. Andrei Suravenkov will tell about the vision of the highly dense campuses, the concept. Dynamic presentation. Yesterday, Andrei said that he had 300 slides. Let us see how many slides he has now.
No, not so many, of course.
Not so many, 250.
No, not so many.
Andrei, you have 10 minutes. We
Yes,
have the student
several.
audience who are getting a little bit fidgety. So we hope it will be a very dynamic presentation. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
I'll try my best. Thank you. Dear colleagues, I want to present one of our master's project, which supports a very good idea about connecting and working together business, students, industry. So I will share my screen. Can you see screen?
Yes.
Okay. So today I would like to present to you a concept of a new public place that successfully supplements the usual functions of a Russian-style university. This place can become a scientific center with an important social function, joining together several universities into a research hub for the society with direct business participation. One of the important challenges for modern Russia is to create a close interaction between science, education, business, and government to improve the cooperation between science and business. This will accelerate the innovations and reduce the time from the inception of a scientific idea to its practical realization as a business product. Such an interaction can be encouraged by a facility that implements science popularization and involving citizens into research activities. Such an involvement may start at an amateur level, but then after appropriate education can be promoted to the professional participation with business and industry. To address this task, it's useful to develop a special model with a particular structural and spatial composition. We believe that the best solution for this problem is to create a public space with a pronounced recreational function that will serve as a natural attraction point for the center visitors. For example, such a public space may be actively sought by business actors as well. For example, JetBrains, it's a Russian center at International Software Corporation, have recently created scientific museums in Amsterdam and St. Petersburg to promote science among general audience. The structure in question provides both recreational function and the functions relate to the scientific and commercial activity. The development of the structure is based on the experience of various businesses and organizations, to which universities, technology parks, museum quarters, etc. As the main function of the studied structure are the museum and recreation and also scientific functions. We choose the name of this structure is it's Science and Museum Center, in short SMC, SMC. And the main goal of such a center are mutual visibility for science and business, providing an opportunity for researchers to find business partners and investors, and giving an opportunity to businesses to choose a developer of their project. Science fair for business. It's a possibility to choose a research group to work with from many options. Also, a kind of petri dish for startups, creating maximally nurturing environment for birth and growth of new ideas in scientific organization and communities. Also open doors into science. It's about involving visitors into scientific activities. And last is science popularization, making science accessible for the most wide group of citizens possible. The key objectives for the SMC developers is thus to create a comfortable, organic environment where all the stakeholders would be able to work collectively on these goals. We have carried out an analysis of the structures currently present in St. Petersburg that are partially solving the problem of business, society, and science interaction. The analysis criteria we choose include the scientific activity, science popularization, higher education, mediation between science and business, introducing the amateur into in the collective scientific activities. We found that no full analog for such a center currently exists in St. Petersburg. Thus, we decided to carry out an analysis of the facilities that are similar to the center according to the presented criteria and are located in other cities. In particular, we have focused on the functional and planning structures. This comparative analysis enabled us to figure out the main functional zones in the studied facilities. Finally, we have studied the relative importance of the functional zones and the interaction between the zones in the facilities in question, and applicability of the findings in the structure of the suggested SMC. The zones can be divided into several levels according to the degree of involvement into the scientific activities. Level 1, it's entertainment level, is designed to popularize science for the general audience. It includes exhibition zones and recreation zones. Level 2, amateur level, is designed for the regular visitors of the SMC that not only visit the exposition, but are also involved into the amateur science through workshops, lab activities, etc. Level 3, its professional level, is designed for the professional research activities that are related to the higher education and research institutions, and for promoting interaction between business and the science. In particular, it can include office spaces for the high-tech businesses and business research labs. The analysis carried out allowed us to formulate several requirements for the possible location of SMC. The area of SMC should be from 10 to 18 hectares, and SMC, this center, should be located close to a technical university, research institutes, and high-tech industry. SMC should also be easily accessible by public transport. The authors have found that the following functional zones should be included into SMC. Research and development zone, science and education zone, commercial zone, which includes cafe, restaurants, shops, etc. Business residence zone, business incubator zone, also service zone with information center, parking, and also other spaces. Also, its art and recreation zone included common spaces, clubs, green zones, etc. And exposition zones with exhibition facilities and storage rooms. The zones are connected by the transit framework, which allows to organize the movement of the visitors. This framework includes communication space and also may include some of the zones listed above. Also, it can host some of the commercial, recreational, or exhibitional facilities. To fit the requirements this center should satisfy, the authors choose to place SMC close to Polytechnical University, at the former location of the Television Research Institute. The site area is circa 11 hectares, and it's situated 600 meters away from Polytechnical University. And it also is relatively close to ETI University, ITMO University, High School of Economic campus in St. Petersburg, also St. Petersburg Medical University. It is also close to some of the important high-tech businesses such as JetBrains, Svetlana Elektropribor, Yandex, Lumo Factory, and others. Finally, it's adjacent to the IOF Institute, one of the largest research institutions in Russia. Thus, such a placement allows to create a common place for interaction between scientists, business people, and the students. One of the important objectives considered during the development of the complex was creation of a common recreation zone inside the quarter. This zone was designated to the multi-purpose leisure and communication zone, attracting the general audience into SMC. To create the recreational zone, the structure of SMC was aligned with the transit framework, creating pedestrian transit from the subway station to the bus stops and residential areas. The compositional center of the site is a square with a green recreation zone. This SMC center buildings located near transit framework host units divided by the access level with a designated set of zones in each of them. The part of the units with the domination of either recreational zone, exposition zone, or commercial zone is either connected to the main communication space, for example, for the shops and cafes. or integrated into it. For example, IMAX cinema, playground area, etc. These units constitute common center that have public access level.
Andrei?
Yes?
If I may interrupt you, you're running out of time, and how
Okay.
much?
Sorry, okay.
Just 1 minute I can give you, but not more.
Okay, I will show now 3D pictures. Will not explain more about plan or structure of this center. So it just I want to show that we can create a perfect and very interesting public space with many facilities, which can help us to connect business, students, industry, together and involve many people into the scientific work. So we believe that creating of such common spaces will attract the general audience into science by creating recreational facilities. And this center will also provide comfortable environment for interaction between researchers and business people. So as a result, the universities will enjoy significant expansions of the available opportunities, both for attraction of a greater amount of motivated applicants and for productive interaction with the business. So I think such an interesting space can help many universities to work together.
Andrei, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was a real exposure of LETI audience who are not architects, but a way of thinking of an architect and a lecturer in architecture. Very interesting project. Geographically, in the scale of St. Petersburg, it's the opposite side of St. Petersburg. And we will have to deal together with you, together with the GASU is the acronym for St. Petersburg University of Architecture and Civil Engineering. Actually, this is the knowledge center and the incubator of new projects. And one of them has been presented to all of you by Andrei. Now, thank you once again. And
thank you very much.
I was asked by, not everybody could ask questions in the chat. So there are 2 questions to Dara, but actually, as I can see, they are in a little bit similar. Yeah, probably everybody was so impressed by this image, emergence after darkness, yeah, by Murakami and other visions. So the question deals with the universities, what to prioritize. I'm summarizing the questions. What to prioritize in this new situation after the lockdown, when you get out out of lockdown? Dara, this is the question to you. Mm-hmm. What should university prioritize?
Interaction.
Now, in the current situation.
Mm-hmm. Interaction. I believe it should be interaction. It's not about physical or virtual. It should be about the intensity of interaction. So we should prioritize intense, meaningful interactions between different actors. And then, depending on what kind of interaction we're talking about, decide on the specific dimensions of space, be it virtual or digital. So that is a general answer. I think it's kind of an erroneous way to think about universities of the future when we try to decide between digital and virtual, or try to think about that, how they will combine, without first thinking about interactions that will be happening there.
Thank you. And I believe there will be more questions to Dara, because as for me, for example, I'm still digesting some notions, for example, chance encounters or tagging, tag zoning and all that. So we hope that we will be in contact, we'll stay in contact with you later and ask more questions. And now we are gradually moving to the conclusions. So I'm giving the floor to Anastasia. This is, I would define it not as a final, but as a perspectives. So Anastasia concludes the session.
Yes, I think so. Not the final, but I will try to announce very many times mentioned content and a little bit summarize everything. First of all, thank you, each of you, for a wonderful, really wonderful and very, very interesting presentation. Start from Dara, with whom we are constantly thinking about developing, about internalization and other aspects. Then Pascal, who give us a lot of links about how can we develop our campus. It's one thanks, very, very great thanks from me and from our audience. Then Antonella, she spoke a lot about such kind of new spaces, virtual spaces, and we are wrote together, project together. So for us, it's really very, very wonderful. And I hope that we will continue this discussion. Then Jasper, thank you for your tips. And as Tatiana told, we are waiting for you for the next discussion about educational formats. And I will announce it very soon time. So it was really wonderful. And your university, not only your, but a lot of universities, such kind of benchmark also for our university, and it's really a pleasure to see your examples, your cases. Thank you. Then Ari, it's our partner and a very good friend from as a lot of speakers today, and you show also very interesting project of your university, and I'm really appreciate and very happy to hear it. And at least Andrei, thank you for such kind of interesting project, and I'm very hope that we will work together in a very nearest future, and so it will be very, very soon. And so now I ask my colleague to open my presentation. Galina, please open my presentation, and I will announce about our very soon contest of young architects. So you see the timeline. We start from today, and you can enter our website and saw all the contents. We can organize a special virtual exposition for you. You have already seen our videos, but we can continue in a real time, and I hope that in a very nearest future and our foreign guests can come to our university, and not only foreign but our local guests too. Then at the end of the May, we are going to finish this contest, and in the middle of June, we will show the best project for our audience. And you see the September, I hope that until that time, we will realize all our things, thoughts, and ideas in a real life. So we have 4 zones for such kind of renovation in a very nearest future. And the first one is Vladimir Garden. You see the monument in the middle, and some places of our universities. You have already also seen it at our videos with our students. Then the forum is the middle part of our campus, a very beautiful one. It's winter time, but you see not only winter time. In winter time, we put our New Year tree here in the middle, so it's also such kind of central part. Then American lounges, you see it in our 5th building, and we are also thinking about how to do it very, very comfortable for our students. That's why students are here, and also with us thinking about our future, our together future, and physical and virtual and in any other way. And the last place is the entrance of our university. You see the cube, and just the enter of the university. We are also thinking how to renovate it, how to do it more comfortable, more convenient, and modern in such kind of context. You see the jury. Some of them are here, and director is the head of our jury, and certainly it will be more wider, but this is the first view. And you can link to the contents website and connect to us and to take part in this kind of, I hope, very fruitful and interesting contest, international contest. Thank you for your attention. I hope that we will see each other in the nearest future, see each other in real life. I hope that pandemic situation will finish at least, and everything will be in a normal way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Wonderful speakers. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. And we'll see you in LETI. By the way, it was one of the very first questions which was not answered. How to get to LETI? How can people get here physically? So we will be organizing tours here. So it's easy to apply and easy to come. Of course, right now we have, so to say, special regime for those, for the entrance zones. But many of us have antibodies, got vaccinated with Sputnik V or something. So some of us are not wearing masks, and we will be very happy to greet you here. Thanks, Noviknes and the consulate and all present students, brave persons who are exposed to new kind of information. And until soon, everybody. Bye.